Pro-mist filters are a common piece of a cinematographer's kit. I recently was in the market for a basic filter kit of my own, but the industry standard filters cost between $400 to $500. Going the cheap route when it comes to camera gear can always be hit or miss, but I'm a firm believer that most gear is overpriced. So I'm a champion of affordable, reliable gear from brands that don't gatekeep. So when I found out that one of my favorite budget brands, Neewer, had a Black Diffusion filter for $115, I was excited to give it a shot. I've been a big fan of Neewer for a while, and I've bought everything from batteries to lenses to soft boxes in the past, and I'm excited to see what else that they have available. Along with the Black Diffusion filter, I also saw that they had a set of ND filters as well, so I bought those to round out my kit, and all for the same price as a single filter from the big name companies. I'll be utilizing these for the outdoor scenes today, and I'll try to annotate and compare them so you can see how they work with the diffusion filter. I want to say up front, this is not a review. Because camera accessories can be so expensive, I have nothing to compare to this, so I can't be the ultimate authority on whether or not this is a good product. This will mostly be a showcase of footage so you can see what it does, how it plays with different lighting situations, and hopefully give you a better idea of what its capabilities are in case you want to purchase it yourself. Be sure to check the chapter markers and time codes below if you want to skip to a certain section. A couple of specs up front. This is marketed as a 1/4 Black Diffusion Mist Dreamy Effect filter. First of all, I can't find a clear definition online that differentiates between a Black Diffusion and a Black Pro Mist filter, and as far as I can tell, they basically do the same thing. In short, you get a slight reduction in contrast, your highlights bloom a little bit, and it creates a softer look for skin tones. If you want to know more, there are a lot more videos online that go into details of specific filters, but I'm just trying to get that halation in the highlights for a more cinematic look. This is a 4 by 5.65 filter at 4mm thick, so it should fit in standard matte boxes or in a matte box tray. All the filters come in a nice, albeit large case that definitely feels like it'll protect the glass, as well as a label so you can easily find what you're looking for. I'm going to be using my small rig lightweight matte box, which doesn't use trays, but instead gives you 2 slots for use a combination of filters. Off the bat, I want to note that this particular filter might be slightly more than 4mm thick, or it might be slightly taller than 4 inches, as it has a tough time slotting into the matte box in the back and an even tougher time in the front slot. I'm not sure if this is an issue with the small rig itself or the filters, but I did test it out with the ND filters and they don't seem to have the same issue. This isn't a huge problem, it just takes a little more pressure than expected, and it shouldn't have any effect on the use of the filter. Though I could see there being some wear in the long term. If your matte box uses tray holders though, you probably won't encounter this issue. So just take that for what you will. I'm shooting all this on the Kinfinity Mavo Super 35mm camera with a set of Rokinon Cine lenses that are several years old at this point. All the specs will be noted somewhere on the screen, and I may consider putting the raw footage up somewhere if there's interest. Check out the description to find out. With all of that out of the way, here are the first tests. Let's start with this current setup. This is the before, and here's after. What do you think? Okay, so for that transition, that worked really, really well, but I did want to stop down a little bit because it seemed a little bit overexposed once you put in the filter. So this is to give you a better idea of the difference here. And obviously you're seeing the change here with the lights. That's why they're in the background. And more importantly, I think it's interesting is that the skin tones do seem to be softened a little bit. The highlight on my forehead just does seem to be a little bit lessened than it was before. Okay, moving on to the first real test. This is kind of an indoor and outdoor duo thing. I wanted to see how the light reacted with the slats on the privacy fence in the background, and obviously you definitely can see a difference there. And then overall, yeah, I think the shadows are being lifted. This is a clear, good representation of kind of what's going on with that. This is the exact same shot, just stopped down, a little bit more exposed for outdoor as opposed to the indoor. And, you know, the blooming is still happening on the slats, not as pronounced. And obviously the contrast is lifted. You might be able to tell a difference, you might not. This isn't a very extreme test, but this is just showing, again, just a little bit of what's going on through, I guess, a window or a door, and you can definitely see that diffusion happening on the edges of that door frame. This next one is basically the same setup. I just closed the curtains so that you didn't get any outdoor light, and then we're relying mostly on the string lights, and then there is a kicker on the left side of her face from a quasar tube.
And obviously the diffusion you see is happening on the string lights. And that's kind of like the look that you want, right? The little bit of halation that's happening on those things. That's the dreamy effect, as you will. I don't like that term, but it is what it is. And again, same shot, but I think we just stop down a little bit and you'll see that the halation is still there, even when you're not wide open. And I want to say that I've been curious about this, but it seems like the shot is getting a tad bit warmer than it was before. I've been curious about this with the previous shots as well. I'm not sure if that's just because of the quality of the light and they're more warm than before. But yeah, you can definitely see what's happening here. Especially take notice of the zombie wall in the background. That reflection of the light is definitely lessened. There's less contrast there in the background. Again, moving on to our first outdoor shot. This is going to be a real good test of like how these NDs work as well. I think we're at ND 1.8 along with the diffusion. I believe we're kind of stopped down to 5.6. The info is on the screen. But yeah, the first thing I notice is that I'm using a reflector on Shannon's face here, and that reflector is really cut when you add that mist filter. And it's not quite as pronounced, but you're still getting some exposure on her face. I don't know if that's just what's happening or if I'm just not catching the light the same, but you can see it moving around as I'm trying to keep it steady in the wind. This is also a good time to note that I'm not grading these. I'm just putting on the ARRI Alexa Rec 709 LUT that you would find on Premiere Pro. This comes default. So just so you can get an idea of what things look like without an extreme grade, things like that. Just a basic 709 LUT. So this is with my 85mm, more of a portrait style lens, and we're going to see this used a lot today. And I mean, right off the bat, there's definitely, when we're wide open, there's definitely a change in the contrast. Skin tones seem to be softened. You got that halation, a little bit mistier effect. There's definitely a change happening in her hair as well in terms of those highlights, and then the overall glow around her head from the backlight. Super interesting. And then of course we're not using a reflector, we're using a softer white bounce on her, but it's still definitely less pronounced as it is in the first shot. Pretty much the same test, but this time we're moving outside of the sun, less light bouncing around, more of a shaded area, but we still have the backlight of the sun and then reflecting on her with a bounce. And again, the light on her face seems to be diminished a little bit, so that highlight getting softened a little bit. Is the bounce? I don't know. Or if it's just, again, the diffusion filter doing what it does. And then her hair is also a little bit softened, lessened. That diffusion's happening in the highlights of her hair. You can definitely see where it's happening and looking in this photo. And as you can tell, I'm probably not a very technical person in terms of the terminology. I'm going to use the same words and the same ways to describe what's happening on the screen. And I mean, you can use your eyes for yourself, I'm sure, and determine yourself what's happening, where I'm failing. This shot is basically the same as the last one. I just stopped down to, I think, 5.6 as opposed to wide open. And again, the bounce on her face is less pronounced. The shot's exactly the same, ND is exactly the same, but that reflection is definitely getting lessened in her face. And so I find that really, really interesting in this one. Going out to a wide shot now, just to get another idea of what this would look like with a kind of lens or something like that. And wow, that glow, the highlight in her hair really comes out when you see that filter like pop on there. You can definitely see it a little bit along the fence line, and especially in the shadow of the leaves, you're definitely seeing it lift up a little bit. It's not quite as crunched on. There's like a little bit of a fade over there, and I'm really liking what's kind of going on with her skin tone. This definitely has a look that is pleasing to me, something that I really like. This time we stopped down. I wanted to get rid of the overexposedness on her hair. And just kind of see what it looks like if it's not completely like blown out, or if there's no highlight on her hair in terms of like bright sun. And again, very similar things happening. Do you think this is warming up her skin tones? Because I feel like something's happening. At least things are softened a little bit. There seems to be a little bit more maybe warmth as well in the leaves and the shadow. Yeah, overall, I'm liking this. Now, this is a more extreme example to see what would happen if we expose completely for the background, more specifically the sky, so that it's not blown out at all. And obviously you can see that's where most of the diffusion is happening. If you look around those leaves areas, that's definitely like a little bit of diffusion happening around there. More interesting is the fact that I think maybe I caught the light better in the second shot, because it's brighter in the second shot than it was in the first one. And typically that's been the other way around. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. That might just be the fact that I reflected it better. I can't really be sure, but yeah, I think it's just this is just an extreme example. You probably wouldn't do this, obviously, but just to show you what's kind of going on. Maybe you'll see the differences, maybe you won't. We're moving on to our golden hour. This is where the diffusion filter, I think, really starts to shine. You see that mist, that diffusion is just kind of overall affecting the trees. You're bringing up the contrast there. Really, really interesting. Again, lessening the light on her skin a little bit, or kind of diffusing it. And again, warming things up, but that could just be because the light that's hitting the glass is more warm in general when it's sunset. So I don't know. We did try to see how it would be if the sun is completely out, just shining directly on. You're getting a huge kind of glare. You wouldn't want to do this probably, but I mean, it's giving you an idea of what it would look like. I am reflecting again with the same reflector bounce, so everything is a touch warmer because it's a warm sun. But yeah, that diffusion is definitely happening more in the trees is where you can see it, but it's happening all over, obviously, but it's very subtle to me. Here, we're just letting the sun go down a little bit farther just to see what will happen, and we're blocking it now. And there's that warm diffusion look that I was talking about. You can see it just around her hair. It's just giving a nice diffused, a great look. This is just a beautiful shot, you know. I don't know what else to say here, but I mean, you be the judge of what else you think is happening. I did want to get a shot without any NDs, without any bounce, to see what that would look like, and we're exposing completely for her face. And yeah, you can see how that definitely changes with the filter on versus off. Definitely warming up her skin tones a little bit, in my opinion, and definitely softening overall the look, but it's not making it too extreme. This is definitely a subtle look when the light is not shining, you know, directly on the glass. It's definitely a subtle but pleasing look, in my view. This is after sunset, with the sun completely gone below the horizon, and we're just using the available light here. And you can, same things that's been happening before. You can see the diffusion around her body. You can see what's going on with the hair. You can see what's going on with the palm trees in the background. Definitely a different look. I'm happy with these shots overall with what's happening. That said, I wanted to try a shot where I'm trying again to expose completely for the background, the sky, so it's not blown out at all. You don't see any blowing out in the clouds or anything like that. And this is just, you know, no light on her face, obviously, but we're trying to see how this would look and how you would utilize it. And again, we're lifting up a little bit in the shadows, but it's subtle. And then we're pretty much the same thing here, but we're putting some light on her using the phone. This is probably a shot you would see in a film or a show or whatever. And this is, again, I noticed that the highlight on her face from the phone is being lessened a little bit with the filter on versus it off. Very interesting to me. Okay, back to wide open so you can actually see her face and make a better determination of what's happening. You can see that fade just kind of go on the overall like level. The black's kind of coming up, maybe the highlight's coming down a little bit. That's what a diffusion filter is supposed to do. So yeah, things are diffused. The brightness on her face, I can tell you that's the same thing. We kept it where it needed to be. She didn't move anything on the phone, but you can see it's definitely lessening on her face. It's diffusing the light that's reflecting on her as well. And then here, same exact thing. We just used the yellow background of her phone just to give a different light quality. And when I see that transition, I'm super interested in what's going on, like around her hair, around her face, around her skin. It's it's again subtle looks, but super interesting. And again, you are getting maybe a little bit more detail, a little bit more blacks lifted overall. Here's some nighttime shots. We're using a neon sign, a red neon sign, to light her because I wanted to see how that would look, and then see how the lights are performing, the street lights, the neons, the car lights, everything. Just see how that's playing with the diffusion filter itself. And I mean, this is kind of what you would want. This is where you're going for, and overall with this kind of filter and this look. Another just nighttime shot. We're just looking at the neon of the local bookstore on Ventura Avenue here in Los Angeles, California. And yeah, that diffusion on the bookstore sign is definitely, you see what's playing. You know, do you like it? I like it. Are things warming up, or is that just the quality of the light itself? The light is hitting the glass and it's kind of giving a fade to everything, and it seems to be warming things up too. There's a slight color shift. I can't tell you what it is. I'm not a colorist. And then again, another nighttime shot with another neon sign. We're using a bright pink neon sign just to give a different quality of light on her face, see what that would look like. And yeah, I mean, mostly I'm loving the background. This is why you buy the filter. This is what I like. But you're definitely seeing how it's softening up. It's not as harsh on her face. The light's not as harsh. And for the last set of videos, I wanted to do a just normal studio setting, a lot like where we started out. This is our normal video audition kind of setup. You know, you got a backlight, you got a softbox light hitting the face, and mostly what we're looking at is like how the highlights are happening on the skin tones and where things are getting softer or whatever. The look otherwise is very subtle. You're not going to tell much difference. I guess if you want that detail, then avoid a filter like this. You know, if you want to retain those details and everything like that. But as you can see, it's not like that you lose that detail. It's just things are overall getting a softer look. You know, this is not an extreme test or setup. This is not to showcase, you know, the diffusion factor. It's just showing like a normal case scenario where you would probably use this, and how subtle the look actually is overall based on what it was before. This one was very interesting. These are some fairy lights like right in front of the lens wrapped around the matte box, and I mean, overall it's kind of hard to tell the difference side by side, but there's definitely a difference happening. You probably have to go back and forth just to kind of see what's going on. These are the string lights by themselves. We do a kind of a wide here, and then we do a little bit closer up, and obviously this is, you already know what's happening here. This is the halation on the lights themselves. It's not very different. I don't know that you would want to use this, you know, for this kind of purpose, and if you're just showcasing lights. But if you have the lights in the background, if they're doing something else practically, then yeah, this might give you a look that you're wanting. This is them close up just to see how it plays if it's closer versus farther away. Not much to say here. I would say that the light on my hand is very interesting. It's kind of, again, lessening the light in the softbox hand. This is the same distance. The softbox is still there as well, playing a little bit, but there's definitely something changing there as well. That's kind of just interesting, curious. And of course, I couldn't do this test without testing out my lightsaber, and just to see how that works. Now, at first, when I was reviewing this, it seemed like, oh yeah, does it look like a lightsaber? Does it look like it's glowing more than it was before? And you can see there's definitely a glow effect almost, but it doesn't feel like it's the filter per se. It still doesn't show that like there's a lightsaber there. You know, it still just feels like a light source. So I don't know if you'd want to do this for an effect thing, but it does something if you're going for something here.
Overall, I can say I'm pretty happy with this purchase. For $115, this filter did pretty much exactly what I expected. There's halation on the bright light sources, an overall lifting of the contrast, and the entire look is subtle and not overwhelming. If you didn't know a filter was being utilized, you might not even notice it, and that's exactly what I was hoping. In each scenario, while reviewing the footage, I found myself drawn to the shots with the filter practically 99% of the time. It really is something I would be using when I'm looking for that more filmic quality. I chose not to do a heavy grade on these particular shots because I didn't want it to be about color grading, but I was also interested to see how some of these shots might look if you added some grain from film convert nitrate or something similar, because that would also be the ideal scenario when utilizing these filters. I'll include a few of these shots now so you can get an idea of how this might elevate your image, giving you a more cinematic, or again, a film look when combining it with film stock and some grain. Even though you can probably achieve the same in post without a filter, I like the idea of capturing things in camera as much as possible. Keep in mind that while I am uploading this entire video in ProRes, YouTube is not a big fan of grain, which is another reason I chose not to include it in the initial tests. You'll want to download the raw files yourself to test out and truly see the details of the shots. I recorded everything in ProRes 422 in 3K resolution in a 3:2 aspect ratio. If there are enough comments below, I'll try to include a Google Drive link for downloading the raw footage for you to play around with. While you're there, let me know what you think of the filter yourself. Did you notice anything I didn't? What do you think of the quality of the filter? If you've used other Black Pro Mist filters in the past, how does this one compare? Do you think $115 is worth it for a piece of gear like this? Let me know your thoughts below because I'm definitely curious what others think about this filter. Before I go, I did say that I would do a quick ND test with all the filters so you can compare if you're prone to analyzing such things. Here they are in order: 1.8, 1.2, 0.6, and then no ND at all. In each case, I tried to match the exposure as much as possible between shots by adjusting the aperture of the lens, but I didn't touch the ISO or the shutter angle to assist. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of the quality of the ND filters as you compare them side by side. Thanks again for joining me on this adventure. I didn't expect it to be so long, but I wanted to be as thorough as possible for anyone discovering this filter and thinking about buying it. If this video was helpful to you at all, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. I also plan on doing a follow-up with a local cinematographer who owns a red Komodo, which might be more in line with what some of you are thinking of purchasing. But that's all dependent on how well this video does, so please let me know what else you'd like to see and comment below if you found this valuable. Until the next video, I'll be podcasting about content and other stuff elsewhere on my YouTube channel. You can also always reach out to me on my Discord, and you can find more resources and ways to engage with me on my website, mattiasallegro.com. Thanks for tuning in. Can't wait until the next one. Later.